TalkTV's international editor, the excellent Isabel Oakeshott. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning.
First of all, let's talk about the U-turn. I mean, you and I made our feelings plain last night. You know, it's almost bewildering to me that these boys and girls in the Westminster bubble, until now, thought it was wildly popular, a real vote winner, to tell people, we're going to make you poorer and colder, ban you from going around in your own cars, we're going to charge you for all of that, and also we're going to look down on you if you go to Spain on your holiday, because that's bad for the environment. I mean, my question really, Isabel, is why has it taken Rishi so long to realise the bleeding obvious?
Well, it's not that they thought it was a real vote winner. I mean, if they'd paused to think for a second, they'd have known perfectly well it wasn't a vote winner. It's just that they didn't care because they think they know better than ordinary people. They think that ordinary people who instinctively can tell that this hurtling rush to something vague called net zero is frankly not really founded in any kind of rational judgment. They think that those ordinary people are too stupid to understand the issues. I mean, I've lost count of the number of times I tweet about climate change and the net zero agenda, and I'm repeatedly put down as just being too stupid to understand it. Well, hang on a minute. I have a first-class degree, a number of academic scholarships. I'm not too stupid to understand it, and neither are millions of ordinary people who realise that it is patently obvious that we are not in an era of global boiling. It is apparent that the weather is changing. Quite how much of that is man-made and we can influence is absolutely up for discussion and debate. Most people, I think, in Britain are keen on conservation. They want to save animals and they want the planet to be a nice, green and pleasant place. They want England and the UK to be green and pleasant. What they don't want is to be bankrupted at the altar of something that just doesn't make any sense when other countries in the world are just pressing ahead, as you rightly said, authorising and giving planning permission to yet more coal-fired power stations, burning away their fossil fuels. We're already setting an amazing example on this, but at enormous cost to households that can already struggle to withstand the huge cost of living burden that came off the back of the profligacy by the state during COVID. So Sunak has made a panicked decision here, not because he and his mates still think secretly that they know better than the rest of us. They still think that. But what they're staring at is electoral oblivion in a year's time. And there is nothing that concentrates a politician's mind more firmly than the prospect of being out of power, out of a job. So they're hoping that they can claw it back with this. I say good luck to them. I think they might just about inch back from the precipice, from hurtling to total political oblivion. But if they think this is enough, and by the way, Rishi Sunak is still saying, I still believe in the net zero.
Of course he does. Of course he does. Yeah.
It's not going to be enough.
Meanwhile, poor old Keir Starmer is looking like he's been completely stymied by this, still promising us a greener, unfairer future. Sorry, greener, fairer future, still committed to this green claptrap. His response to Rishi's U-turn was to say, well, Labour will still ban petrol and diesel cars in 2030. Why does he think that will be popular?
Brilliant. I mean, brilliant. What first-class politics from Keir Starmer. I mean, has he spent much time out of his cosy Westminster bubble? Has he got away much from those nice dinner party conversations that he has, and the salons, and the globe trotting around and hanging around with people who only provide an echo chamber? Outside the M25, this is not popular. People don't understand really what net zero, what it is. Why do we need to do it? And they instinctively feel that there's something very wrong with this. And by the way, they actually quite like the fact that the summers are a bit hotter. That is the truth. You know, the whole thing about we're going to force you to have a heat pump. Well, we now know that these heat pumps are completely unfit for purpose in the vast majority of properties. People aren't stupid. You know, they can see that that is an asinine policy. If you haven't got a better alternative to the existing setup in people's homes, don't force them to buy something that is going to leave them with a tepid shower.
Yeah, I mean, these are policies to make us poorer and colder. Rishi said, still banging on about heat pumps yesterday, that the government will immediately increase its what is prepared to give people to install these useless cold pumps, £7,500. I believe that the average cost to install one of these is about £24,000. So if you've got a spare £15,000, £20,000, the government will chip in a very little bit and you can do your bit to save the planet. Once again, look, I recently had a new boiler put in, a gas boiler, I'm proud to say, only a couple of years ago. It works brilliantly and there is no way on earth I am having a heat pump installed. And another thing Rishi seems to have realised, Keir hasn't realised it yet, if a government starts telling its citizens what they can and cannot do in their own homes, it is straying into extremely dangerous territory. The authoritarianism in the energy bill is extraordinary. You know, if you don't put in a heat pump, I mean, I guess they've railed back from this a little bit today, but until yesterday, if you don't put in a heat pump, you'll go to prison. Businesses, you know, same for business owners. You go to prison if you don't do everything we tell you. Again, the Rishi and the gang are realising that this kind of authoritarianism, frankly, isn't British and is not viable.
I mean, look, this is all an absolute racket. And I think what many who observe this, the whole net zero debate with bewilderment, perhaps underestimate is the sheer scale of the vested interests attached to this. The quangos, the charities, the businesses that are all benefiting from gargantuan subsidies. It is a multi-billion pound gravy train. And there are an awful lot of people whose livelihoods depend on continuing to perpetuate this sense of panic and impending doom that the world's about to come to an end. And that is their sales pitch. You know, without that fear, without continuing to convince policymakers and try to convince voters that the sky's about to fall in, the rivers are all about to flood over and we're all going to be swimming for our lives under a boiling sun, they can't continue to peddle their products. Yeah. Follow the money is always the way. That will explain to you why we are where we are. You know, pretty much every big business is invested in this in some way, and they're all at it together. And ordinary people can see that much of it is a gigantic con.
Absolutely. I'm just watching King Charles addressing the French Senate, no doubt vocalising his own green obsession. Yeah, well, we talked about this last night. I love the fact he banned asparagus from the French state banquet last night, which seemed to me to be exclusively attended by British people like Mick Jagger and Hugh Grant, of all people. He banned asparagus from the menu because it's out of season in France and therefore would have to be flown in, and that's bad for the environment. But it's OK for him and the Queen to fly 100 miles from Britain to Paris when they could perfectly well get the train, and it's OK for them to stand in the Champs-Elysees and look, watch this massive great flyover. Again, it's the hypocrisy of all these green warriors that really gets on my nerves, including His Majesty the King.